Welcome to DroneCast, rethinking public safety one drone at a time, a podcast by DroneSense. We explore real-world applications of drones and emergency response, offering a close examination of evolving trends in drone technology and its impact on public safety.
Welcome to DroneCast. We're here to explore how technology is transforming the way we work, live, and stay safe. I'm your host, Joe Kerns. And today we're diving into the incredible journey with Adam Bilmes, co-founder and business development manager at Inspired Flight. From his surprising beginnings as a sous chef to becoming a key player in the drone industry, Adam shares how passion, serendipity, and entrepreneurship comes together to create a company that's redefining domestic drone manufacturing. Stay tuned as we uncover the story behind Inspired Flight's rise in a competitive global market. Inspired Flight is a key player in domestic drone ecosystem, competing in the field dominated by international manufacturers. Adam brings a wealth of insight into his challenges and opportunities that come with building American-made technology in a global competitive market. This episode's theme is building Blue in a sea of international competition. We'll dive into Adam's unique perspective on fostering innovation and navigating competitive landscapes and balancing compliance with creativity. From exploring market dynamics to discussing what's next for the U.S. drone industry, this conversation you will not want to miss. Welcome to the show, Adam.
Thanks for having me.
Well, Adam, could you tell us a little bit about your journey into the drone industry and what inspired you to take the plunge?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Admittedly, it was a pretty serendipitous journey into the drone space for me. The way kind of Inspired Flight started, I really came from a background of not knowing about drones. I came from hospitality backgrounds, had played around with consumer drones, the ones you buy at Best Buy, right, for $500. A few of my friends had them growing up, and then through college as they got more popular. Didn't really know anything about drone technology, but I was looking to do something in the entrepreneurship field, really looking to help stand up a business and very interested in founding or co-founding a company. And I met my co-founder, Mark Stolmeyer, really the robotics engineer and our current head of product, kind of the brains behind all the innovation and of the technology at Inspired Flight. I met him at the local, what we call the Hot House in San Luis Obispo, tech incubator. And at that point in time, Mark had a couple sketches, an initial prototype of a motor technology, which actually Inspired Flight was initially founded for, was to be a motor manufacturer and a components manufacturer. And again, didn't know anything about drones, but recognized an amazing opportunity after spending some time getting educated on the market, just by myself as well as Mark. And recognizing then this is back in 2016, really that we were at the very early stages of what was poised to become this absolutely explosive market, leveraging autonomy, leveraging all the advancements coming from the automotive world. My whole life, I've always been super interested in aviation. So I saw it as an amazing opportunity to kind of just get into this new industry. Again, didn't know anything about drones, but it was a product at the end of the day, and I felt like I could learn it and kind of really stand up the business side of what's become Inspired Flight. And then fast forwarding 8 years later, happy to say, or at least I think I know a lot about drones now with how this space works. I'm sure you know, Joe, there's something new to learn every day, a new novel application folks are trying to use UAS systems for every day. So it's been an absolutely incredible journey.
That's awesome, Adam. Now, you and I, we've spoken on this before, but we share a bit of a similar background of how from the culinary arts and hospitality and such, and then moving into this drone technology space. This is pretty wild. I would love to dive in a little bit more on that. What was your other profession before this? What side of hospitality or culinary arts were you in?
I was primarily back of the house. I worked as a cook in many, many restaurants. And then my longest stint right before Inspired Flight, I was a sous chef of a fine dining Northern Italian restaurant in San Luis Obispo. So cooking has always been my passion. I did a lot of some front of the house as well. I know you were in the kind of that som bartending world. I did a little bit of that. But for me, I was able to express creativity back in the kitchen. And I love just being in kind of that pressure environment. And I think that's really dovetailed. We're talking about worlds differences between these two industries.
But there might be a similarity there at the same time, right? Like it's remarkable because there's still moments where I'll literally reference back to a situation I found myself in that has now moved into this industry. And tell me more.
There's so much that dovetails, I think, from service jobs in general to professional job to a new manufacturing business, a software business such as DroneSense. There's just so much that dovetails from learning about how to take care of people, how to serve people, how to make people feel like they are getting a good value for the money that they're spending. I do believe that everything boils down to service and customer relationships at the end of the day. So as long as we're putting a good product into the hands of customers and then backing that up with exceptional service, right? That's exactly how I see amazing restaurants. It's not enough just to serve an amazing plate of food and a good glass of wine. You need the ambiance and the front of the house and the relationships to really make that an experience that you would want to go through again.
That's well said. And it is quite the full ecosystem, right? And I now see this in Inspired Flight and the full ecosystem, not just the motors that you originally started with working on, but the entire thing you're building here, which is remarkable. And I mean, Inspired Flight, that's quite the name. It's very, you mentioned creativity, and this is like creativity and ambition with that name. What's the story behind the company name? And does this reflect on the full vision and where you're going now today?
There's a bit of a story there. It's probably not as an exciting one or creative as you might think. Really where it started was we got our start with, as every engineering-led technology company does, the first name for Inspired Flight was the name of our technical founder, his last name, and then technologies, right? Like every engineering company startup starts. Something to be said about exceptionally brilliant robotics engineers maybe not having the most creativity from the go-to-market sense. So initially, we were the Stonemeyer Technologies. Pretty quickly on in our journeys, we started to gain some traction. I mean, we're talking 6 months to a year in. We had a conversation. It was like, okay, if we want to be a real company and get to a point where we're not, we don't say our name and people think we're a 10 to 20 person maybe company, we're going to need a real one that kind of emphasizes what we're trying to do. So unfortunately, I can't take the credit. It was one of our first employees where we kind of just had a huddle back when we were working on beanbags out of the tech incubator. Everybody just throwing names up on the wall, and Inspired Flight was the one that stuck.
Nice. Now, let's get into some questions here we had talked about. One was the theme of this is a lot about the Blue UAS perspective, or building blue in a sea of foreign competition and competition across the whole US and so on. When we say Blue UAS, there's also NDAA compliant, and there's so many terms kind of being thrown around here. Could you elaborate on this and the perspective from Inspired Flight, yours, and help educate our listeners and customer base here?
I think that's become one of the most convoluted topics in the drone industry. I spend a quarter of my time educating our customers and our dealers on what are the types of configurations that we offer, what is compliant, let's say, for a customer in the state of Florida, what's compliant for a critical infrastructure commercial customer that is looking to de-risk their supply chain and their operations from China, and then what does it look like for a warfighting customer, right, that needs to take the system for warfighting or Department of Defense activities. And really what's happened is a few years ago, this amazing program came out called Blue UAS. Happy to say that Inspired Flight is a part of it. Blue UAS got put out, and it was really designed to be a Department of Defense initiative to validate for NDAA compliance that a company wouldn't be using critical components, and critical components to be defined as things that pass information, radios, flight controllers, right? Not such things as like the carbon fiber arms, if you will. That go on FAR systems as well as others. Really kind of the critical components. We want to make sure those aren't from an adversarial country. There isn't any method or certification process outside of Blue UAS, and this is a couple of years ago, for NDAA compliance, right? You had the federal government put into 2021 National Defense Authorization Act, hey, federal money really shouldn't be or can't be used for purchasing Chinese drones. And that, we'll call it China. That's where most of the adversarial countries we're talking about. So really what's happened there is the industry kind of latched on to this Blue UAS program as, hey, if I need to be NDA compliant, or if I need a drone that we could use for a federal project or that we can use on our critical infrastructure, I need a drone that's on the Blue UAS list. And I think that was a fantastic start for the industry. It really started to give some credibility to companies like Inspired Flight, as well as many others on that list, saying that we could point to commercial customers or state customers and say, hey, this is a DoD program that they took our systems and put them through really serious penetrative testing on cybersecurity, on supply chain. If it's good enough for the Department of Defense, it's going to be good enough for you, right? And that's really, I think, where the industry has come to. So even when we have commercial customers coming to us now saying, hey, we need a Blue UAS drone, I think that's been very, very good for the past few years. But now as that program progresses and the industry does as well, there's a few other mechanisms that have kind of come into place to try to take the focus away from the term Blue UAS for everybody using drones, federal government or commercial, that is not in the Department of Defense. I think the DIU, the sponsor of that program, is really trying to emphasize to the industry, hey, we created this program for our department, for the Department of Defense.
It wasn't meant to be a catchphrase, right?
It wasn't meant to be the catch-all for your local utility wanting to make sure that they're using a US-made drone. So now there's been this introduction of a new program called Green UAS, still fairly new, but starting to make a lot more progress. Same level of kind of certification and testing, and same testing body that Blue UAS uses, but really targeted at the broader federal government community and kind of commercial critical infrastructure. And of course, you have just the standard NDA self-certifications. So I think that's an important thing to keep in mind as this conversation continues, because I think for the industry to truly scale, and now with the Blue UAS program that will be going through kind of an evolving list, a refresh, if you will, every year, it's going to be important for companies to understand what do they need to buy to make sure that they're de-risking their operations for years to come with a system that is NDA compliant, that meets federal regulation.
It's interesting. I'm already thinking about something that relates to us in our previous lives in the food world and so on. And from certified organic or biodynamic wine or like all these kind of terms. And we're really getting down to that where it's protected or there wasn't a standard necessarily yet. And now we're after that. And now we do have these correct ways and now a yearly refresh rate. This is going to be big.
It absolutely is. And I think it's more so than just wanting to use what the Department of Defense has said, this is a good. There's such nuance in these different configurations. Like our official Blue UAS configuration, I wouldn't want to sell that to a utility customer, to a commercial infrastructure customer that doesn't need that DoD configuration. There's such a laundry list of security protections and encryptions that are part of that configuration that will just not fit into like a commercial company's ConOps, if you will, right? How they go about their operation. So that is why I like to talk about that nuance. And it's important for people to know Inspired Flight builds Blue UAS compliant platforms, and everything that we do is NDA compliant. The company was founded, to be honest, with a bit of naivety, I think, from myself and Mark way back in the day in 2016, saying, hey, we're going to be an American manufacturing company. That's what the company was founded to do. We absolutely couldn't have seen, fast forward 5 years, 2020, 2021, this rapid shift in geopolitics that all of a sudden really helped position Inspired Flight with a multi-year head start over some of our domestic peers. In that we had already spent 2 to 3 years starting the company based on building a domestic supply chain. And I think dovetailing the question a little bit outside of the compliance world, that's been the hardest thing for Inspired Flight to build. And I think for any drone manufacturer, UAS manufacturer, as well as just manufacturing in general in the States, supply chain and building a reliable, robust supply chain and being able to scale with incredible quality systems, it's kind of a skill that's been more so lost in the US over the past few decades. And there's been a lot of learnings amongst Inspired Flight, as well as companies all around the country, as I think the kind of the geopolitical tide starts to shift from this multi-decade span of complete international trade to going back to a form of nationalism and building equipment that can sustain a country on its own. I think if you look back at history, it's a very common shift, right? We've seen that shift from open international trade to more nationalist back for thousands of years. You can see that kind of that repetition. So interesting studying geopolitics. And I guess I didn't start a drone company to spend 25, 30% of my time talking about geopolitics, but it's absolutely fascinating and it's a crazy world we live in.
I hope these conversations and the story that has been painted by all these different people in this industry will be told over time, because it's a fascinating one and it's wild. It's very almost tumultuous sometimes, but it's a really fun industry to be in and part of. Now, you've answered some great parts about some of the challenging aspects of manufacturing in the United States and building blue, quote unquote, and such. But when you're competing with these international manufacturers and with all these unique challenges, what are some of the surprising advantages you've discovered in focusing on US-based production?
I'll start by saying this. I think accessibility has been our biggest advantage, both on the internal manufacturing side, the ability to work with our suppliers that are nearshored, the company that machines all of the parts for Inspired Flight, all the metal parts, for example. There's a company right down the road from us. So I think that really helps in that we're able to work with our domestic partners and our domestic suppliers. And the benefit of living in a capitalist society like America, especially at such the beginning of as explosive an industry as this, there's so much hunger out there, both amongst the manufacturers like us, amongst companies like DroneSense, amongst the new suppliers that are starting to build components for US UAS manufacturers. So much hunger. And what that hunger kind of combined allows us to do is move so incredibly fast. And so I think that's an incredible advantage we have by being a domestic manufacturer, is just the pace that we're able to innovate and the pace that we're able able to go after this market opportunity has been incredible. Both with kind of the pace of inspired flight, but just looking around the industry, everybody and how fast it's doing. Like, look at DroneSense, right? 5, 6, 7 years ago, drone as a first responder, public safety drone agencies were not much more than a really bold sheriff telling somebody in his department to go to Best Buy and buy a drone and see what you could do with the drone to help reduce hazardous man hours and keep their officers out of harm's way. So it's just absolutely incredible to see how much the industry here in the US has kind of rapidly evolved. And I do think that is a huge part of that is just kind of the American mantra, really, and how we're all so excited to go and build here. And then on the other side, keeping that vein of accessibility, one of the biggest advantages that we have over some other international manufacturers is our ability to provide exceptional customer support. And that's the entire post-sales process, from delivery to training to the inevitable need for repairs. For anything that happens, for our customers coming to us and saying, hey, here's some feedback that you guys can use to iterate your product and make it a tighter solution for the application that we're going after. That ability just to speak to our customers, to listen from our customers, to have that face-to-face interaction with our customers, I think is exceptionally important. And right, tying it back to that hospitality vein as well, there's nothing like breaking bread over a meal, right? It's the same thing as doing a training in person, getting face-to-face with your customers, hearing their feedback. Certainly the good feedback we want to hear, but even more importantly, give us the bad feedback. How can we improve our products and our strategies to better serve the client, right? At the end of the day, what we build, the drone, it's a tool. Really, that's how we need to look at it. The drone is a tool to go serve sometimes novel, sometimes traditional application. Take, for example, surveying. Surveying's been done for hundreds, if not thousands of years. Using drones to do it, the advantages of that is just the efficiencies that you gain out of it, how much faster we can go, how much less expensive we can do it. Then when you look at public safety as well, right? Public safety has been certainly for thousands of years, an incredibly important part of society. But being able to put drones in it, what does that do? It allows public safety agencies to use less human resources, take their officers out of harm's way, give them better situational awareness as they go into a potentially dangerous situation to protect the greater public. So that's, I think, some of the advantages just for being a US company is.
Exactly. And I mean, it's, hey, I need to have a part returned or fixed or this or so on. And it's going to take 8 weeks to ship out to, say, country for repair. You're right down the street in a lot of cases. That's great, Adam. Now, if I'd like to expand even a little bit more on that, maybe on the hardware on itself. And how do you think American-made drones can stand out beyond just the labels of NDA compliant or Blue UAS or American-made and so on? Is it the innovation? Is it the reliability? Is it, customer service and so on, like you mentioned? Is it something entirely else? What would you say?
I think I'm going to give a little lame answer in that it's a little bit of everything there, right? But I think some of the biggest advantages for how hardware can kind of overtake that is, well, let me take a step back by saying, like, at Inspired Flight, and I think many other manufacturers or companies in the US do believe this. It's about the product at the end of the day, right? It's important to talk about the fact that we are an NDA compliant company, that we build US-based product, that we're creating American jobs to build these systems. That's exceptionally important. And one of the biggest reasons that I'm so motivated to build Inspired Flight is to create more American manufacturing jobs. But really what's important for our customers at the end of the day, does the product allow me to go serve my objective, go complete my missions? So I think some of the advantages that American hardware has over some international space things right now is quality and reliability is absolutely an area where the US manufacturing industry, especially for drones, that needs to be our first and primary focus always. A drone company can build 1,000 drones. And if you have one of those drones fall out of the sky due to bad quality, that's a huge reputational risk, right? It's very hard, as you know, it's extremely hard to build a reputation in any industry, exceptionally easy to lose it. And when you're talking about flying robots, right, that line becomes even more narrower. So quality, reliability, safety absolutely always needs to be the first priority for companies like Inspired Flight, especially considering we have customers, whether they're doing public safety applications or they're slinging $250,000 LiDAR payloads underneath. The importance of that drone safely operating is paramount. So that's, I think, an area where we absolutely can succeed today. And then another one is kind of commitment to products over a lifetime. I think what we've seen in the drone industry over the last 10, 15 years, especially from some international manufacturers, is this constant kind of rinse and repeat of introducing a new product, 12 to 18 months later, that the 2.0 version works. And now that 1.0 system, you're not going to get the use out of it anymore. It's not going to update. Basically, the company's telling you, time to give us more money if you want to still play in the same sandbox, right? And I think a lot of American manufacturers recognize that while there's some short-term advantages from kind of the revenue side to doing that, it really harms the customer and it harms the long-term relationship with our customers. In that it's a story I hear all the time from folks looking to adopt a US-made drone and evaluating inspired flight is, I'm kind of sick of having to buy a $10, $20, $30, $40,000 drone every year, every 2 years. So I think that's kind of an area where inspired flight tries to stand out, is commitment to quality and commitment to supporting the product for a serious amount of time. And for inspired flight, that's a minimum of 5 years for when we launch a product to how long we're committed to supporting it. And to really back that up, other than just saying we're going to support a system, we actually offer an extended warranty for that span of time. And whether a company or not may take advantage of that extended warranty from inspired flight, it speaks to them in knowing, hey, Inspired Flight's going to continue innovating and they're going to continue creating new features and capabilities for their platforms, right? We're not ones to stand still, but everything that we're going to do is going to be backwards compatible and we are going to take care of our initial customers, right? It makes no sense to tell the first customers, the ones that brought your product when it was that much worse or that much more expensive, the ones that really gave you the shot, to say, hey, we're going to forget about you guys and now focus about the mass market. The early adopters that we got to take care of, because those are the ones that are going to help us get to the scale that we envision.
Nice. Well said, Adam. Now, I hear such a drive behind you and I hear such excitement with this. And I'm curious, how do you foster this innovation within Inspired Flight to keep up and hopefully surpass international competition?
Well, first by saying, because I know a lot of our team members internally and our engineers are going to listen to this talk. So I'll give credit to them by saying we have an exceptionally innovative team of engineers, right? Like the new features, the ideas that come out of Inspired Flight internally are incredible ones. And I do truly believe that. But at the end of the day, I think most of our innovation, where we want that to come from, is out of the mouths of our customers. And I think it's easier said than done. Every company says, hey, we listen to our customers, right? We listen to our customers' feedback and we let that drive our product roadmap. Actually doing that is a totally different story because it takes massive amounts of investment of having people on, for example, Inspired Flight's payroll, where their job is to shadow our customers in the field for a week, for 2 weeks, and to really understand how are our products being used out in the field and like what can we do to make those jobs easier, to make the pilots in the fields, not even sometimes like the fleet managers, the folks that are sitting behind the desk that write the purchase orders for a fleet of systems. How can we make the pilot in the field's life easier so that they can drive those efficiencies back to the business? Because when they drive those efficiencies back to the business, that fleet manager will have no problem signing a PO for even more drones as their program scales.
That's a wrap for part one with our conversation with Adam Bilmes. From humble beginnings to groundbreaking innovation, it's clear that Inspired Flight has a fascinating story to tell. In part two, we'll dive deeper into the challenges and triumphs of building drones in the US, navigating international competition, and what the future holds for this dynamic industry. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next episode.
DroneCast, Rethinking Public Safety One Drone at a Time, is brought to you by DroneSense. To find out more about DroneSense and how our comprehensive situational awareness platform can help you fly, share, and manage your drone program, please visit DroneSense.com. That's DroneSense.com. And then make sure to search for DroneCast in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or anywhere else that podcasts are found. Please don't forget to click subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. On behalf of the team here at DroneSense, thanks for listening.